Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Nate, and with me is Mike.
It is a tale as old as time. We are smoking, and that's a hint because this is going to be kind of, even if it's not a two-parter topic-wise, it will be a two-parter cigar-wise. We are smoking the Gurkha Beauty, and it's a hefty one. It's a Gurkha Legend, and looks like a lighter wrapper, Connecticut maybe, and it's a girthy, lengthy bastard. All right, so Mike's had some technical difficulty. It could be us, but I'm just going to blame Mike for it because I don't want to blame myself, and therefore I should go into politics.
Well, I have a very old MacBook, and we're going to blame Steve Jobs because he's dead.
Let's blame him. Also, we've been continually smoking throughout, so we're, I don't know, maybe a third of the way through the cigars, so just heads up that if we finish before you finish...
There we go.
That's assuming you're smoking the same cigar we're smoking. But to bring us back to where we were is I'm assuming that like other episodes and other topics that we talk about, it's not going to end up being a America is all bad or America is all good. It will be some shade of gray. But I'm excited to hear Mike's 4 pages of single-spaced notes.
Perfect. So people talk about America, and whenever I criticize America to people, they like to bring up, well, would you rather live in communist China? Or something
like
other.
That's the only option.
Like that's the only option. So we're going to lay some groundworks. There's 36 countries that meet the IMF, World Bank, Human Development Index, and also make at least $22,000 a year of a first world nation. So the IMF, the World Bank, and the HDI, which is created by the United Nations, has a set of criteria that makes you a developed country. There's 66 of those, but only 36 make more than $22,000 a year per capita GDP, okay? So when we're comparing America, really we're only talking about 36 to 66 countries that we're even considering in the ranks. You know what I mean? Out of the 224.
I mean, there's that.
Oh,
go on.
Oh, I said.
No, I was just gonna say
because there's 224 recognized countries. Oh, geez, we're talking over each other. Go ahead, Nate. I'll be done.
No, I got to get some words in before Mike gets going. Because like we're talking, what you said, 36 countries or 66 or whatever it is. But there's countries out there like that one country that has that tribe of people that don't want to see any. Like that reporter tried to land there and they shot him with a bow and arrow or something, so nobody's landed there forever.
Right. Yeah.
Like we're not talking about that country. Like that's not where we're not comparing to that country.
Right. I think there's 174 countries in the UN, and there's 224 countries in the world total, but only 36 meet all the criteria of a developed nation.
Yeah, and to be comparable enough to the United States.
Right. 66 are in the zone, 36 are really what we're looking at. So you talked about the sweet spot. You were talking about the Human Development Index earlier. And
yes.
The HDI is created by the UN. And it's a stat that gauges an economy, life expectancy, education level, per capita income, and it's an attempt to capture what the economic opportunity of a country is, or economic opportunity for an individual.
Sure.
Is that your understanding, I guess?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a true happiness index, but it takes in enough other things to where you can kind of get a quality of life index. And that wouldn't necessarily equate to happiness, right? Because there's certain things that are causation or correlation. And this would probably be more in the correlation camp and less in the causation camp because there's a lot of things that contribute to happiness.
Right. So the UN ranks the United States 20 and 21 on the HDI, whether it was last year or the year before. It switches.
That sounds an awful lot like not number one.
That sounds an awful lot like not number one. So,
are we sure the UN isn't communist?
Right. The UN, for those who don't know, is basically funded by the United States. So anything that it produces is going to favor the United States as much as possible.
Well, we got to up our contribution then if they're giving us 20 or 21. I mean, come on. Aren't we?
Right.
We got to bribe them for something, right?
So
how are we going to get all those immigrants to take our jobs? ranking 2021. What is it with that bullshit?
Well, this is going to make you even more interesting. there's something called the Inequality Human Development Index, which is also used by the United States, the United Nations.
Yeah.
And that modifies the HDI with the level of inequality in a society. And basically, they attempt to create a more realistic view for the average person. And on that index, the United States is ranked 25th.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is
And
still
we'll talk
probably
about
better than our. I feel like that's still better than our math scores on standardized testing compared
we
to
have that.
nations.
we have that on this list too, Nate.
Oh, okay. I'm jumping the gun. I'm getting ahead of things here.
Yeah, oh yeah. So a lot of this data comes from the United Nations and for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And that group was created in 1948 to run the Marshall Plan in Europe. And then at the conclusion of the Marshall Plan, it got co-opted into the Cold War to promote democracy and capitalism around the world. And that organization creates a lot of stats that the United Nations and other stuff uses. So a lot of this stuff is coming from this like Cold War era US backed NGO.
Okay.
Just so we all know.
So, and before we get too much further in, I feel like I'm just approaching the halfway mark, and I had a couple sour puffs here on my stick. It's been good so far, but I had a couple sour puffs, so I'm kind of sounds like Power Puffs, but they're sour puffs, and so I'm just gonna let it sit for a little bit. I don't know if you've had the same thing, Mike, or if that's just I got excited when you were saying we're 25th, and I was puffing angry.
If I remember correctly, this one's really susceptible to getting sour if you smoke it too fast. So I'm really only like 3/4 of the way through because I've been trying to take it slower during our
I'll try
technical
to take it
difficulties.
slower too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, carry on.
Mine's
so these are all
good,
Cold
but
War
I'm taking it a little
stats.
slow. These are all a lot of these stats come from this Cold War organization that wants to boost the Western world. So they're trying to like make the U.S. look good because it's paid for by the United States tax dollar. So these are best case scenarios, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And some of them are pretty good. Some of it's good. It's not all gloom and doom here. So there we go. You and I, we have a fairly good life, and I would like to live more of it, right? So the World Health Organization has ranked the United States health expectancy, which for us is 77.28 years. And they have this index, and it's based off of 195 countries, which is all of the UN countries. So I misspoke earlier. It's 195.
Okay.
What rank is the United States out of 195?
Well, I know it's not number one because, well, I don't want to say because why, but I feel like there's other cultures that live an awful lot longer than we do.
The United States is ranked 51.
Okay.
So we are out of the 36. We're still in the 66.
Yeah.
But we're out of the 36, which is where we really want to be. Even be in the ranking to be one of the best, we have to be in top 36. So there we go.
Yeah, for sure.
On to education, which you want to talk about the healthcare system or the education system first?
Well, we just talked about life expectancy. So let's kind of go that way, I guess. And we'll stick there,
Sure.
And then we can switch over to education.
Sure. So for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Prosperity, the blah, 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 the United States is ranked 36 out of 36. We have the lowest life expectancy, and we have the highest per-person medical costs of $10,000 per year on average. The next lowest country, which is number 35 out of 36, has a life expectancy of 81 and $6,800 out of pocket by comparison.
Okay, so it's a good 40% drop of medical care.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
yes.
What, like 10 extra years, 10 extra years or whatever?
Three extra years.
Oh, 3 extra years.
Like 40% more money.
Yeah.
The WHO has ranked our medical system. The WHO.
Who was that?
They've ranked our overall medical system as 37th in the world overall.
Okay.
And if you take the health of citizenry as a priority, we're 72nd because our citizens are not healthy.
Yeah, and so that's out of the 195.
That's out of the 195. We're 37th
Okay.
overall for medical and 72nd in health of the average citizen.
Okay.
Yes. The U.S., we got a top 10 here. The USA has the 5th highest reported cancer rate in the United Nations.
You know what? It's a win, and I'm going to take it.
Right. Now, granted, I looked at all these stats.
Yeah.
These first world countries are all higher than us for the cancer rate as well. I think Bangladesh was in the group, but it's like Netherlands, and a lot of the cancer rates in the Western world are high because we have reporting.
Yep.
So again, it's based off that main 36 because that's where our main group of data is from, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And I think like that's a good point, Mike, about the cancer rates and reporting. And we don't have the greatest health care. I think anyone that's an American knows that. I think anybody that's not an American knows that we don't have the best health care. But we do a lot of reporting, and we have a lot of, mandated reporting on stats and things. And a lot of these other countries just, they don't, if they're industrialized and westernized or whatever, or, first world country type of thing, they probably have reporting, but it might not be as stringent as ours. Not that it does us any good really in the long run, but it's kind of one of those things when you're looking at 195 countries or 66 countries or even 33 countries, not everybody collects the same stats. So sometimes it's a guess. Right.
It's all relative. But like I say, they're going to try to make the United States look as good as possible when they can. So,
yeah.
The United States has the 46th highest maternal mortality rate in the world.
Okay.
Out of the top 36 nations, we have the highest childhood deaths. So we're 36 out of 36.
Yeah, and I guess let's clarify that just real quick. What does childhood death mean?
All-cause mortality.
According to the
all-cause mortality. So that includes gunshots, that includes car accidents, that includes childhood cancer rates, that includes everything.
The thing I was trying to get at was, does it count abortion? Because
no.
I just want to make it clear for any religious listeners that when it says childhood mortality, that means post-egress from the from the womb.
Well, I mean, I don't want to dive too deep into it, but we have like 200% more childhood deaths from car accidents, and like the numbers are crazy.
I mean, there's a lot of crazy factors. And SIDS kind of comes up and down, and a lot of other countries don't have that same kind of issue with it, I believe.
So some of this is all right. So these are the 5-year survival rates after certain diseases. We have 13th best for colon cancer. We're 16th best for rectal cancer. We're 5th best for lung cancer. We're 9th best for stomach cancer. We're 14th best for childhood cancer. This is the high one. We're 2nd best for breast cancer. 31st best for cervical cancer. 7th best for heart attacks. And 6th best for hemorrhagic strokes. And 4th best for ischemic strokes, which I've never heard of.
I know some of those words.
Yes. So it's a real mixed bag for our long-term survivability after major events. If you have breast cancer or lung cancer, you're pretty decent. But for everything else, we're kind of middling. We're kind of a middling country in a lot of these stats.
Sounds about accurate.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the theme here, guys. I hate to tell you this, but we're just we're not the best. We're not the worst, though. Never let anybody tell you that we're the worst.
I think that's kind of the thing is, when you say, well, I hate it here, or like, I wish America would be this or that. A lot of the people that are on the rah-rah pro-America side are so that side that they will not even take any form of criticism whatsoever. And they go right to the, like you said, well, would you rather live in communist China? That's not what I said. That's not what I meant. There are things that need to be fixed and should be fixed here. I'm not saying I'm packing up my bags and moving to Russia or China or that island in the Pacific or wherever that's got the tribe that will shoot me with arrows. Like, that's not what we're saying.
Right.
And I think anybody that's a little more logical and rational will say, like, look, there's some good things about America. There's some bad things about America. On the whole, like, without doing a huge kind of life change or big international move, like, what are you going to do? Or you're not really going to go anywhere. I mean, some people do, but
the more you look at the stats, there's no one country that comes out as like a clear number one. There's averages that are significantly better than the United States, and there's probably a dozen countries that are overall better in a lot of ways. But even they have issues. You know what I mean? Like they have problems too. They're not perfect. So there's a growing community of people that think that the United States seems to be like unforgivably evil and bad, and that's just as foolish as the people who think that we're the greatest country on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not the worst country on earth. We're definitely not the best, but I mean, all these numbers you're gonna find it's middling at best. We are number one in certain areas.
Like the carbon? Did you also look at like the carbon footprint?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
yes, I did.
Figured you would have. So, all right, carry on because we got a lot of stats to get through.
Yes, we do. So we're gonna go on to education. We are ranked 16th best education system in the world.
Okay.
I don't know how they got that because internationally we're ranked 40th in math, 25th in science, and 24th in reading. So I don't know how you add those three together and get 16, but apparently you do.
maybe the statistician went to school in America.
Mm-hmm. We have the second most expensive post-secondary system. England is more expensive than us.
I was just going to ask who was first.
Yeah, it's England. Costs have doubled since 91 at private schools and two and a half times at public. So, yeah, it's gone up. And then apparently, and this stat got started to get recorded in 1980, this is the lowest ever that a college degree has made in the history of the country. So that college degree that's costing twice as much is now worth the least amount it's ever been.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think it's only going to go down, to be honest.
Oh, it will. It will.
The value. I mean, the value of the degree is only going to go down.
Mm-hmm. I agree. A lot of the degrees that are valuable in our country right now are like 2-year degrees. And people going to 2-year school is not very high. So we'll see. But there's a coming change, I'm sure. So let's move on to our government because people love the United States government. They love to hate it and they love to love it.
Yeah,
and I have a couple of interesting stats. Oh, they love to talk about it. So people love our democracy. They think that we're so democratic. The Economist magazine has rankings for these things, and they generate a metric out of 60 indicators. And the United States is ranked 30th freest country out of 167 that they ranked.
Now, I don't know about that. That doesn't sound like number one to me.
The United States government was ranked 23rd least corrupt by Transparency International, which is an NGO that works with the UN. We were ranked the 45th most free press by Reporters Without Borders, which also works with the UN. Huh?
I said, okay.
Yeah. And we were ranked 21st least corrupt in the justice system by World Justice Project, which also works with the UN.
Well, shoot, that's pretty good.
Right. It's like I say, it's not great, but it's not the worst.
Yeah. 21st is definitely not 25th. So
yeah,
we got that going for us.
Well, you have to remember, we're competing against 36 countries realistically.
Yeah.
So we're like middle to bottom of the top nations.
It's kind of the yay, we're not last.
Yep, we're not the worst place to live in the developed world. Which is great.
We got the most Super Bowl wins of any country, I'll tell you that.
We do. We have a big topic because our economy is the Republicans like to say we have the strongest economy in the world, and they have this big message, right? That, economy. And a lot of the economy statistics are manipulations, right?
Well, yeah.
So they like to talk about averages, and they don't like to talk about medians when they start talking about income. And they like to talk about GDP. They don't like to talk about GDP that's adjusted for purchasing power. And they don't like to talk about the median GDP.
So just for a quick refresher between average and median.
Yes. So I have this written down because I knew we didn't want to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah.
The average is taking all the people and taking all their data and dividing it by the number of people. Where the median takes half of the people on the bottom side and half the people on the top side, and they find the middle of these 50 percentile groups. Boom. So in the United States, according to the World Bank, the United States is the 4th most unequal country on the planet.
I can see that.
Okay. So out of 225 or 4, we're number 4 most unequal. We're more unequal than France before the French Revolution.
Yep.
So 2.29% of our country has zero income and is not looking for work and is not included in our unemployment statistics.
Yeah, because that's another cook the books kind of thing, the unemployment. And I remember that back when, like 2008, like that crash. And you have to be actively seeking work to be considered unemployed. And if you kind of give up, then you're not unemployed anymore.
Right. And we're ranked 20th in the number of, or the percentage of the population that is just not looking for work and is, either homeless or living off other people.
Yeah. And
that's a huge percentage of people. So when you talk about averages, you're taking that 2.9% and then you're talking about Bill Gates. And then you're trying to somehow make that okay with the average, which is impossible.
Yeah, what? Bill Gates makes so much money that I heard one statistic at one point that he makes so much money that if he were to drop a $100 bill, it wouldn't be worth his time to stop to pick it up.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that one too. So now that we've kind of laid a groundwork for our stats, I would like to talk about our economy, right?
All right.
So the average incomes of percentile, right? The 0.1% average income in the United States is $3.2 million. The top 1% is $823,000. 5% is $342,000. And the top 10% is $173,000 for an individual. Okay?
Okay, so if you're making like $170K a year, you're in the top 10% of earners in the country.
You're on the edge of the top 10% because you have to be 173. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just meant like generally speaking.
Right. So with that in mind, our per capita GDP is $74,000. Okay. Our median
for individual, right?
Per individual. So our per capita, that's our average GDP is $74,000, right? The average income is $54,000 and the median GDP is $33,700. See what I'm saying?
That's a little swing.
That's a huge swing. So if our GDP was split up evenly amongst all people, we'd all be making $74,000 a year, right? If you take all of the money and you divide it up equally, you take all the money that we make and you take all the people and you divide it the same, it's only $54,000, which means that $2,000 or $20,000 per person is actually going to a corporate entity. It's not going to an individual at all, right? So $2 out of every $7 is going to a corporation, just disappearing out of the pool.
But we're not a corporatocracy or anything.
Right. Yeah. $2 out of every $7 made in the United States goes to a corporation. Mm-hmm. And so like I say, the median.
I love that for us.
The median income is $33,700. So even that average is a manipulation because of all the rich people who are taking the other $2 out of the pile.
Yeah.
So their average is inflated to make it look good. And I also wrote a note that when you look up the average income or the median income in the United States, it pops up 67,000, all the sites. But if you dig into that, that's for a family. That's for a household. That's not for an individual. Okay. So it's a manipulation. Earnings. That's family earnings.
So that's really like 67,000 for a family.
So that's really 33,760 is what it is. Yeah, that's the medium income for a person in the United States.
Yeah.
So it's all
you know what, Mike? You know what, Mike? Freedom isn't free. It costs $1.05. Okay.
Right. Oh, I know. And I want to. So this is another one. I loved this. Wage increases from 1979.
What's that? What's that? Yeah. What's a wage increase, Mike?
Wage increases. Yeah, I know. So I have three groups. The top 0.1% saw a 389% increase from 1979 to 2020.
Okay.
The top 1%.
And then between 2020 and today, it was another 785% because of the pandemic, and they just raped everybody.
Possibly.
Anyway, sorry. We're only going to 2020 with our stats today.
I actually have one coming up to 2023.
Oh, okay. Well, you keep going. I didn't want to derail us.
No. That would derail away. The top 1% of earners made 179% more.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the bottom 90% wage increase from 1979 to 2020 was?
I'm going to go right out of my corporate handbook, and I'm going to say maybe 3%. And I think that's being a little generous. Oh, 28%. Okay.
Yeah. So the increase in wages is
from 1980, so it'd be okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it's like a tenth of what the top 0.1% is.
Yeah,
what do you think the inflation rate is during that same period?
I've never heard it go down, and I know recently we've had like 11, 12, maybe even 15% inflation for a couple months here. So I feel like the inflation rate probably is a little less than what the top 0.1% saw in wage increase.
You're right. It was 256%. So every American from 1980 until 2020 lost money other than the top 1%.
Lost over 200% of their income.
Yes. In real earned wages.
To inflation, yeah. I mean, to inflation.
Yep.
Because you can't get a 26% increase over that time span and have a 250% inflation increase and still be okay.
Right. Yep. From 2020 to 2023, what do you think the inflation has been?
Well, it's been, I would say, average per year or just collectively?
No, from 2020 to 2023. So you have to take the inflation rate for all 3 years.
Okay. I'd say maybe like 50%.
60%, yeah.
60%.
Just shy of 60% increase. Yep. So realistically, it's even worse for normal people because my wages haven't gone up that much. You know what I mean?
No, even if I go gangbusters at work, I get a 3% increase.
Right.
And it's like, but we've had 11%, 15%. And, cumulatively over 3 years, it's been 60% inflation. And I've got maybe a 3%, 3%. Like, no.
Yeah, you're up 10%.
You're not okay, like it's not, I don't think it's sustainable. And I know that's not what we're talking about because we're talking about general happiness, and there's all those people out there that say, well, money can't buy happiness. Well, you know what? No, money doesn't buy happiness either. So.
Well, there's these like weird stat people that say once you make 75,000 USD a year, your happiness is pretty much peaked out. But we're half of that. We're not even half of that for the median. So we're only 50% of the maximum happiness level. If we had equal sharing, then we would all make that. Our economy can't even generate that amount of wealth for everybody to make that. And it's kind of crazy. And so our GDP.
I feel like it could. But that's completely separate topic.
Sure. We do have the highest GDP, but when you adjust it for exchange rates, we have the second highest. China beats us out when adjusted for exchange because the exchange is based off of the U.S., so everybody's number goes up or down based on ours.
Yeah, as it should.
So this is the one that blew my mind.
Okay.
When adjusted for purchasing power, our per capita GDP, which we've already shown, our per capita GDP is twice our median GDP. So this is already a manipulation. Yeah. We're ranked number 12 in the world per capita GDP, right? And even scarier, our per capita GDP at number 12 is 57% of the fifth highest per capita GDP and half the top.
Okay, that was a lot of words in there.
So our per capita GDP is 70. Let's see here. What the heck is it? Like 74,000, right? Somewhere in there.
Yeah. That sounds.
We're ranked number 12 in the world. Okay, per capita
with
GDP.
That GDP. Okay.
Yes.
But we had just then said we're like 30% median, right? Or 30,000. Well,
the median GDP is half of that. It's like $30-some thousand.
Yeah.
It's less than half, I suppose, when you get to the nitty gritty. But even with that inflated GDP number, we're still only number 12 in the world.
Yeah.
And we're half of the number 1 country in the world per capita GDP.
Oh, got it. Okay, so the per capita
Right.
GDP of number 1 is like 140 or 150.
Yeah, it's like 143 or something like that.
Okay,
And then
sure.
the 5th ranked spot is like 130 some, right? So we're
Okay.
57% of the number 5 spot. So there's a huge gap between number 5 and number 12.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
pretty
and then
crazy.
you're talking about purchasing power.
Yeah, that's one adjusted for, or that one's adjusted for purchasing power. So that's not raw GDP numbers.
Okay.
That's adjusted for exchange rates for currency.
Okay, I got it now.
Mm-hmm. Which is the real.
This must have
that's
been
what matters to
some
us, right?
real. Yeah, I mean, this must have been
Yeah.
some real nice, light, late night reading for you, compiling all these stats and making sense of them.
Yeah. Oh no, I did
Feel
the work
like
to
I'm
understand
back
it
in.
all. Yeah.
I feel like I'm back in econ or something. Like, what the fuck are
Right.
they talking about up there?
I enjoyed economics in college.
Oh,
I always thought
yeah,
they were a
I
bunch
mean,
of nasty fucks, though.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. It takes a little bit because a lot of the terms and the stuff and like the stats, it can get very confusing. So I'm not intentionally
easy to
trying
get lost.
yeah, I'm not intentionally trying to be obtuse, but I'm just trying to clarify so I understand, and then hopefully our listeners can understand as well. Because if my
Right.
head's swimming, other people's must be as well.
Yes. Well, the GDP talk, the important thing to take away, we're not the richest country in the world. We're the 12th.
Yeah,
And we're only half as rich as the richest country in the world.
and the numbers that they're reporting are gross manipulation.
Yes, and the numbers
for the
that are
most
being
part.
reported is a gross manipulation. So, and again, that's why we're ranked 4th most unequal country in the world by the World Bank.
Yep.
So there we go. Yep. And I couldn't believe that almost 3% of the U.S. population is basically unemployed forever.
Yeah, that's kind of mind-boggling to me. I don't know. Do they then subside on the social programs, or what do you?
I think that there's a mixture of homelessness, right? Some of those are homeless. Some of those people are in social programs, and some of them are just leeches. They're turfs, man. Or not turfs. They're not employed, not in education.
Yeah, like the NEETs.
The NEETs. Yeah, the NEETs.
And we had a whole episode, season 1, about NEETs. So if you need more data on that, go back to season 1 and check it out.
Yep. So interesting.
Yeah.
Another little couple economic stats. We have the 19th highest minimum wage, aka 18 countries have a higher minimum wage than we do. According to the World Economic Forum, we are 2nd in global competitiveness and 3rd most globalized, which basically
Okay.
means that we have the fewest regulations and the least amount of worker protections, 2nd and 3rd in the world.
Yeah. Well, if little Billy
Yeah.
wants to work, little Billy's going to work, okay?
Right. We have the 8th best cost of living in a country out of the major nations. So we got that going for us.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't
that's
have
pretty
purchasing
good.
power or income, but,
Right. We're
cost of
pretty
living
good.
ain't too bad.
Right. Let's see here.
I mean, some people
The-
live in Iowa.
Right. We have the Prosperity Index, and we're ranked 19th in the Prosperity Index, which is like a investment firm metric that tries to balance wealth, growth, education, health, personal well-being, and quality of life. So it's like a
All right, so we just barely missed the top third of that. I guess
Yeah,
19
yeah,
out of
it's not too bad.
36. If that's what we're comparing against, I think it's
Right.
fine.
And then we have two bad ones. We have the
No.
13th highest household debt out of any country. And even worse, we have the 12th highest government debt as a percentage of the GDP. And if you
They
look
just
above
keep
us,
raising the debt limit, and it's okay.
oh, if you look above us on that list, they've all gone bankrupt. It's pretty sketchy.
Okay, so what
Yeah,
happens when a country goes bankrupt then?
That means that they have austerity and they have to cut all their government programs, which for us would mean anything other than the military.
I thought that's what we already did with our budgeting.
We kind of do, but we still have public lands and we still have stuff like that, which we have that later too, because we're actually
Okay,
pretty
okay.
good as far as public lands. But
yeah, I've heard really good things, and we talked about this on our one of our previous episodes about the kind of the national parks and stuff. But
yeah,
we'll
we're
talk
actually
more
really
about
good.
that when we get there. So
Yeah, exactly. So the GDP, government debt is out of control. It really is scary. So
it's scary every time they come up with a new word to define a number above like trillion. You know, like I don't. You can stop inventing words. Just stop spending so goddamn much.
It's insane. It's insane. The military spending is a significant portion of the budget. Some people would estimate 50%. They hide a lot of military spending, so it's hard to assess what it really is.
Yeah, I know. Back in, I think it was, I don't know. Back when I was in college, or shortly when I was out of college, I wrote, and nobody's going to believe this. I wrote a blog post, okay, and I broke down the government data from, like the White House or the Secretary of the Treasury or wherever the fuck it came from, right? And I think I landed on about 46% that was traceable, was military. Maybe a little higher. I can't quite remember, but that was, early 2000s, and it was the height of the Iraq War stuff.
Yes,
but still,
well,
it
did
seems
that include
like an
all the
awful
$1,500 toilet seats?
I don't know. It was just what they reported as military, so it was whatever they wanted to portray. So I didn't dig super into it.
Sure.
In a sense, but I remember looking at it with kind of a critical eye and not delving in to find like ghost funds or whatever, or hidden funds. I found that it was about 46, 50%-ish,
Sure.
Which seems like an awful lot for somebody who hasn't been invaded since like 1812 or something.
Right. We can have guns or we could have butter. And pretty clearly we're not going to have butter. So.
Yeah, butter's overrated. So is tea. Throw it in the harbor.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into happiness. I think we've discussed the economy enough. We're not the best economy in the world.
Yeah. I think the caveat is we're not statisticians and we're not economists and we're not happiness experts, yada, yada, yada.
No, I'm not an expert. I'm just looking at the publicly available statistics and trying to make an informed decision based on my reading level, which is above average. And I'm sure that most of the people listening probably have an
above average.
I'm above average in the United States, which is like 25th in the world. So,
yeah. So, I mean, it's saying something, but not as much something as one would like to be saying.
Yeah. If I was an Australian, it would mean more.
Yeah.
So, you were talking about the Global Happiness Index.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into that. Before we get into that, this kind of ties back into the government and the economy. So the UN creates a global peace ranking, and the United States is 121 of 162. So there's 120 countries that the United Nations considers to be more peaceful than the United States.
So we just don't do the Serenity Now, I guess.
No. That's pretty shitty. I'm just saying. That's pretty bad.
Well, yeah, and that's not good at all, and it should be. And I wonder, and I don't want to make the whole show about this at all, but it makes me wonder if that is one of the things or one of the major drivers of all of the mass shootings.
Possible. Well, we are very warlike people. We have a very aggressive culture.
Yeah, we're not happy and we're not peaceful. And I don't know. The thing is, a lot of these people have plenty of red flags, but we don't have, and that's part of it goes back to the healthcare thing, is we don't really have a societal good outlook on getting mental help. And people have red flags and they say, hey, that's not my business. They should probably go get help, but I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm not gonna say anything about it. Even if they get reported and nothing gets done about it, so they don't get the help that they need. And the help that they need is too expensive because a lot of times it's not even covered by insurance if you have insurance, which some people don't. And it's a whole big thing. And but a
lot of people don't have insurance.
I don't want to get into a huge.
Yeah, we don't need to get into a diatribe about that. We could do a show about that later.
No.
But
yeah. But I think before we go into this next happiness stat, as much as I like being happy, because I do you want to do something crazy, or do you not?
I don't know.
So I was
thinking,
I have a quarter of my cigar
left.
Yeah. I mean, I've got 4 inches left of my cigar.
Really?
Do you have? I don't know.
I have like 2.5.
Oh, okay. I just pulled out my tape measure because I'm very, very bad at estimating distances and numbers and things. Yeah, I got 2.5 inches left. I'm sorry. I guess I was putting it in the wrong area. It felt bigger than it is. So, do you do you have more than 2.5 inches of subject matter?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. You think we're gonna wrap it all up in this?
Yeah,
this
I think so. Yeah, I think
Okay.
we will. Yeah, I don't have that.
Okay.
I do have a lot of stuff, but
Well, so I was going to ask if you wanted to, like, instead of doing 2 episodes, do you just want to, like, when we're done with this, light up the other one and keep going?
oh yeah, I mean we could do that.
Two sticks in one episode. I mean, it's up to you. Like, what do you feel like?
Sure.
It depends on how much, because I don't know if I'd really want to do a topic change if we're going to do the 2 cigars in one episode. But
Sure.
if we're going to do another episode, then let's do a different topic. Just trying to see where you're at.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be able to wrap it up with this one cigar. This last part, it'll be a lot quicker because a lot of the really like heavy duty meaty stuff we got through pretty quick.
Okay.
So back to the quality of life. So the WHO has a quality of life index, and then US News has a quality of life. Yeah, the WHO.
The joke never gets old for me, but
yeah, I know. The US News is gonna has a better number. We're ranked 20th. But the WHO ranks us at 28th.
Okay.
So best case scenario, we're in the middle of the pack. Worst case scenario, we're at the low end of the 36 countries that we're trying to compete against.
Yeah, which is still better than when you take all 195 countries. Like it's fine, but it's not good when you're looking at what should be our direct competitors.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the pack. The Economist ranks the United States the 16th best place to be born. So we're again in the middle of the pack. The Economic Cooperation and Development, that's the little thing that we created back in the Cold War, ranks the United States 30th in time available to be devoted to leisure and personal care. So
30th?
We're 30th and time for leisure.
It's that damn hustle culture, I tell you.
It is the damn hustle culture, yeah. So of the 36 countries, we're 30th in free time, basically, which is shit. I mean, of course people are unhappy if we have no free time. Retirement, this is big. We have the highest retirement age out of any of the industrialized world at 67. Now, this is modified because we can qualify for early retirement through Social Security at 62. And realistically, you can retire at any time, but to get your full Medicare and Medicaid and blah, 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 you have to have 67. Australia, Denmark, Greece, Iceland, and Israel all have retirement age at 67. So we're at the top. But unlike all the other countries that have a retirement age of 67, we also have the lowest life expectancy of that group. So we have the highest retirement age out of the top 36 countries, and we have the lowest life expectancy. So our total retirement age gap is the lowest.
Okay, yeah.
See what I'm saying? So if you combine our lowest life expectancy with highest full retirement age, we get the shortest amount of retirement because we die earlier than everybody else.
Yeah.
By a lot. By a lot. So yeah. We have an interesting stat. Now, I looked deep into it. We're number 1, by the way, in this next stat. We are number 1. So you can be proud of that, Nate.
I'm so proud already.
We are number 1. We have the most prisoners out of any country in the world. The most. We even beat communist China, who has 3 times more people than us. And the reason why, if you look at the stats, we're actually ranked number 2. But if you look down, they separated out all of our territories. So if you add our territories into our prison population, we're number 1. So in order to manipulate that stat so the United States wasn't the highest, they took out Puerto Rico and Guam and American Samoa and blah, 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 blah. So we're actually number 1. We are the best. We have the most human beings imprisoned out of anybody.
Okay.
And even better, we're twice as much as number 3. Ha ha! So beat that, Perfect. Brazil at 800,000 people incarcerated. So there.
There.
If you
we did
if
it.
you
We
take
nailed it.
yeah, if you take a per cap, we're fifth. So El Salvador, Rwanda, Turkmenistan all have a higher percentage of their population in prison.
Okay.
So not exactly nice places. Any of those countries, I don't think.
Yeah.
Oh, and Cuba. Sorry, Cuba's on that list too. We don't want to be in Cuba.
Yeah.
So, we have a really high natural disaster risk. We're 168th out of 185. And that's really doesn't, that just means that we have a huge territory. So I have a couple other countries. Canada is 161st, Australia is 164th, and Russia is 175th. I'm sorry. So a lot of that has to do with the size of the country. But apparently we're very vulnerable to natural disaster. This goes to like our happiness for the internet. And we talked about this before. We have the 11th highest broadband speed, the 25th highest mobile phone speed, but, and this is really good, we have the third highest 4G LTE coverage out of any country that's ranked. So we're not really that fast, but we do have really good cell phone coverage. So that's good. And we have 97.1% cell phone coverage in the States, which is crazy because I go into dead zones all the time. So apparently I'm in one of those areas. Yeah, I don't get that. For the environment, we do not meet the WHO limits on air pollution. Not even close. Our average for a city is 12 micrograms of pollutants, and 5 is the guideline. So it varies by city, but we have unacceptable levels of air pollution. No.
Okay.
Rural areas are good, but city areas, not so good. And funnily enough, the Biden administration's goal is to bring it to 9, which is still almost double the guideline. So
Yep.
there we go. So carbon dioxide emissions, we talked about this. We are the second most in the world, directly behind China. And that means that we're 13.7% of total emissions. And we're not the highest per capita. We're the third highest per capita.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we're not the worst polluter per capita or in total, but we are the second and the third.
Well, if we try hard enough, we can be number 1.
Right. Then I have 3 more quick stats for us, and then we can discuss what you think. We have the second most agricultural land, directly behind China, and that's good.
That's good, yeah.
We have the most expensive and the most powerful military, and that's, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yep.
And we have the 13% of our total landmass under federal protection, which is only the 119th highest percentage by total amount of landmass, but it is the largest amount.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? So like a lot of these smaller countries have more than 13% of their total country under like in the parks program. But because we're so big, we have the most actual amount of land that's under a federally protected program.
Yep.
So, and that's really cool. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, me too. I love being outside and kind of all that stuff, you know?
Right. And by the way, for the air pollution, we're nowhere near the most polluted. The worst countries have 185 micrograms per cubic meter, and we're at 12.
Yeah.
So we're not like crazy in the bad part. We're just above what we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which is not good, but it's not like we're by no means bad as far as like air pollution by comparison to, others. So, yeah, pretty interesting. But I don't know did we talk about the Human Development Index? So we're ranked 20th
I think
on the Human
briefly,
Development. Yeah, we
briefly.
did. We already did. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So overall, if you take the inequality part into it, if you average it out, we're probably the 25th best country. We're maybe depends on how you want to look at it, but we're not the worst place in the world, but we're not even top 10.
Yeah.
A lot of stats up there. I'm sorry, guys.
It's a stat-heavy episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
Well, we knew that was going to be the thing because, like I say, it's trying to create an average out of all these random stats.
Yeah,
and we're not top 10 in hardly anything, unless it's bad.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah. So what do you think, Nate? What do you think?
Well, I think America's number one, and all these other commie countries need to get in line.
Uh-huh.
No, I mean, I think, I think if people would sit and be honest with themselves and understand that you can be critical of the country and critical of the government and critical of things without wanting to burn the flag in the street or move to communist China. If you're, honest with yourself, we're not number one. And I don't think any country is number one in everything. There's got to be a number one in every category, but just because you're number one in one category doesn't mean you're number one in all the rest of the categories. So everything's kind of a trade-off. You got to pick, if it's in your lifestyle to move, what are you going to judge? Which of these categories, which of these stats that we've talked about is most important to you?
Right.
Right. And I think for me, the big ones were like the inflation, the buying power, and the median GDP. Like those are kind of the big ones for me because I've heard that 75K thing too.
Yeah.
Like 75K will buy your happiness, and that's per person, not per family, but per person. And when our median GDP is like half of that, and inflation has been crazy rampant. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. There's other good things about living in America. Healthcare isn't one of them. So, there's room for improvement. And you can look at it negatively. You can look at it positively and say, hey, we've got a lot of work we can do and we can make things a lot better here. Or we can move and not worry about here, too. So,
right. Well, I thought about taking a job in Australia several years ago. I think I told you that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we talked about that. So, and I'm glad I did it because their COVID policies were fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I think I would have gotten mad, you know what I mean? With all the crazy rules and restrictions they had going on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I really seriously considered it at that time. Because Australia is ranked better than the United States on average for a lot of things.
Yeah.
I would say that their First Amendment or their freedom of speech is way less. And obviously, they don't have the same gun rights that we have. So
yeah,
I do consider freedom of speech to be pretty important. Gun rights, not so much, but I like hunting. So, yeah, it's one of those things. But very interesting. Very interesting. So, yeah, U.S. is definitely not the worst place. Like I say, I didn't get offended when I started hearing these like Gen Zers talking about how the U.S. is the worst ever and blah, blah, blah. It's like, get over yourselves. We're not even close to being the worst place on earth. We're just not the best. Like, I realize that we've been taught that lie that we're the best, and it's very clear that we're not the best. But I'm not sure that there is a clear best. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing is, like, there's not one country that really kind of, like, stands out, right, as number one.
No, not really. I mean, the Western European nations are good. Like I say, there's 36 of the top nations. So any one of those 36 is probably pretty good. You're talking about Western Europe, North America, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and then South Korea, too, is actually in that group. Now, South Korea is in that group.
Okay.
So, yep. And it's, And Western Europe, like I say, it's the 36 nations, but most of them are in Western Europe, and they're all little tiny things that are the size of a state. So,
okay.
Yeah, we're talking like Luxembourg and the Maldives and like these little tiny countries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the Netherlands and Belgium. I mean, the Netherlands is like the size of a county.
Yeah.
So, not to like talk bad about the Netherlands, they're a wonderful country, but when you're talking about landmass and all that, I mean, it takes like 9 hours to drive across our state, let alone, the country.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This cigar is pretty good, I thought.
I hate it.
Really? You hated it?
Why did you hate it? I'm not a fan. Several reasons. One is, I mean, the first half was fine, and it tasted fine. Wasn't anything like overly special in my mind. And then the second half got really sour, and I've been trying to not smoke as fast, and then it kind of goes out, and then I relight it, and then it's just sour again. And I don't know. I don't know. This is one I probably wouldn't want to smoke again.
So I took it slow the whole time. I have an inch and a half left or so. And I was slow puffing it. And I'll agree with you that the flavor was not incredible. There's nothing impressive going on.
Yeah.
But I haven't got sour out of it, I think, because I started off slower and I stayed pretty slow.
That could be like, I understand that I'm probably like...
Yeah. The first time I smoked one of these, if I remember correctly, I thought they were shit. And I smoked it too fast, and I thought the second half was crap.
Yeah.
So it's going to be at the user's discretion whether or not to purchase one of these.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And their experience. So how much do you have left?
Let me measure, Mike. And I think it's out now, and I'm not going to relight it.
Sure.
It's just about 1 3/4 inches.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't call this anything particularly remarkable. It's acceptable. I don't think it's better than a bin cigar, though.
No, I don't think it's better than a Fuma.
Definitely not better than a Fuma. Definitely not. Not a Rocky Patel Fuma. Those things are pretty good.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, I that's like definitely one of the memorable ones as far as like a really cheap good cigar.
Yeah.
So, is that going to be our final thoughts on the Gurkha Beauty?
I
go
think
buy
so.
a Rocky Patel
think
Fuma.
So. Yeah, go buy it. Something else. If you're thinking about this, go buy something else.
There we go.
So I think so. I think that's it. I think just like America, this cigar is not number one. It's not number last either, though. So
no, it wasn't offensive.
You know, it's definitely something where it's like if you learn how to smoke it the right way, it will probably treat you just fine.
Yes, and if you're not careful, it will bite you.
Yep, and I done been bit.
Be safe, have fun.
Catch us next week.